Maybe the U.S.-led coalition does have a strategy after all for defeating ISIS. Kurdish PYD forces in northern Iraq launching an offensive near Mount Sinjar on the main road that links Mosul to the Islamic State headquarters of Raqqa in Syria. They're certainly providing the boots on the ground, the Kurds. But will it be enough? And is it a turning point? U.S. air support backing up the Peshmergas, who are also fighting alongside Yazidi units. The Yazidis, who as one of the world's oldest Christian communities have been the ISIS target of mass slaughter and enslavement of women and girls. Finally, remember that 1 month ago, when Russian airstrikes in Syria prompted many to view the West and the Americans as weak, well, now with claims that the Russians are already bogged down in neighboring Syria, who has the momentum? Today in the France 24 debate, the Sinjar offensive, with us to talk about it, former French UN General Dominique Trinquant. Welcome back, sir.
Good evening.
Chief Foreign Affairs Editor Robert Parsons is with us. Rob, just back from Erbil.
Yep, just a week ago.
All right. From London, Iraqi Kurdish academic and energy consultant Shwan Zulal. Welcome back to the show, sir.
Thank you.
And from Lincoln, Nebraska, Sinjar native Halaf Smokey of Yazidi advocacy group Yazda.org. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. Our hashtag F24debate. Kurdish Peshmerga forces say they've captured 3 villages, taken parts of Highway 47. That's that main supply route between Raqqa and Mosul. Here is the latest that we have so far.
A joint attack against one of the Islamic State group's prized possessions. Kurdish forces, aided by US-led coalition airstrikes, are attempting to retake Sinjar. The Iraqi city sits along a key supply route between Raqqa in Syria and Mosul in Iraq.
Sinjar sits astride Highway 47, which is a key and critical resupply route for the enemy. This is the primary road between Mosul and Raqqa, ISIS' 2 primary capitals here. And by seizing Sinjar, we'll be able to cut that line of communication, which we believe will constrict ISIL's ability to resupply themselves and is a critical first step in the eventual liberation of Mosul.
Some 7,500 Peshmerga fighters are attacking Sinjar from 3 sides.
The situation so far is good. We see movement there, but there are continuous airstrikes on them. We're also bombing them with artillery from positions above.
Around 600 Islamic State group militants are thought to be defending the city, which is said to be littered with landmines and improvised explosive devices. Most of Sinjar's former Yazidi residents fled last year to escape the Islamist onslaught. The UN estimates around 5,000 men and boys were killed in the fighting. Thousands more were trapped for weeks on the nearby mountain. Yazidis have recently been returning to surrounding villages, and many have joined forces with Peshmerga fighters in an attempt to retake their city. The US-led coalition has carried out dozens of airstrikes against Islamist militant positions in the past few weeks in preparation for the offensive.
Let me begin with you, Shwan Zulal. How's that offensive going?
Well, so far, I mean, all the indications are it's going really well, and the town itself is being surrounded by Kurdish Peshmerga forces, YPG forces, and the Yazidi forces, which have been in the town, obviously with PKK and various other groups. All the Kurdish groups, fighters have collaborated with each other, and all the supply routes from ISIS is cut off from Mosul and from Syria. So the Highway 47 you mentioned, which has been a major supply route for ISIS, especially for one of the biggest cities they control, Mosul, that has been cut off. Although earlier in the day, a lot of ISIS fighters have been fleeing from Sinjar. Now everyone who has decided to stay, and mostly those are the people who probably would want to die there. They wouldn't want to move. They are in the city. The numbers are not known. There's a worry by Peshmerga forces and the other forces that there's going to be booby traps and IEDs within the town itself. So the clear-up operation is expected to take maybe a few days or even a week before we'll get a better picture of how many people are there and how. Or whether in the past we know that these fighters mostly they're not going to be surrendering. They're going to be fighting until the end, and some of them will be trying to do suicide bombings and so on. So far, I think today there's been about 18 major suicide bombing who has been foiled with, they usually use big Humvees or other armored trucks, which they captured last year from the Iraqi army mainly. Usually what they do, they put tons of explosives in it and they try to drive it into the lines. But with a combination of some of the weapons which have been provided by the coalition to the Peshmerga and the YPG, along with the airstrike, has been very effective in stopping most of the attacks. As far as I know, I haven't heard any major casualties of the Kurdish forces, but in the coming days, it will be the test whether they can stop all of those attacks, which has been going to be carried out by those vehicles, which has been a very effective weapon for ISIS in the past.
All right, and an important point there brought up by Shwan Zulal, which is booby traps everywhere. Because in that report, they were saying only 600 jihadists to keep the city?
Yeah, I mean, defensive position with booby traps are easy to defend with less people. Remember Kobane, the lot of Kobane, there were fights for weeks prior to really take over the city. So I mean that you've got a soldier who have been there, jihadists who have been there for weeks, months. They know very well the city. They have booby trapped everywhere. And so it will be very hard to retake the city. I mean, it will take time. But it's interesting to see that we are rediscovering that the fact that you've got to win on the ground and not in the air, and the air is in support of the ground attack. And that's interesting on both sides. In Iraqi, with the coalition and the Peshmerga, and in Syria, with the Russian, doing the same in Aleppo with the Syrian army.
Relearning that lesson.
Yeah, yeah.
And if it's going to be a deliberate and slow process securing Sinjar, what about Mosul?
Yeah, so you're right. Remember, a few months ago, we were thinking of what will happen in the south.
Because we were talking.
And the next step will be Mosul. And everybody's saying Mosul must be taken by Sunni tribes. So the Iraqi, who is mainly Shiite, has a difficulty to take Mosul. But Mosul is surrounded by Peshmerga. So now we are cutting the line, I say the coalition is cutting the line of the jihadists around Mosul and probably waiting for the fact that Mosul will collapse because it's cut from everywhere.
And there's the added complication, of course, that the Kurds, the Peshmerga, say they will not take